scraps. Okay, got it. We've composted 1.7 million pounds of food scraps since then, and most of that has been in the last year and a half. And that does not include yard debris and all of the carbonaceous materials we've composted, and that is also probably another 1.5 million pounds. We have 3 employees, one of whom's here because she's awesome. We're completely user fee funded, and so we're not run by any subsidies of any kind, and we operate, we're not operating at a loss. We have figured out how to make user fees fund exactly what we do. We have over $250,000 in equipment that we have. It's not just a little girl in pigtails with a pitchfork. We are like a legitimate commercial compost facility, and we are recognized across the country. When we go to U.S. Composting Council meetings, like, people know who Juneau Compost is. We are a very well-established composter. And we have year-round service, and we are open to businesses, residents, institutions. We can serve anyone who wants to be served. Pardon the slow scroll. So collections, we offer curbside service, and so we're going to individuals' homes and we're getting their material. We're going to businesses. Some of them have them at the curb, some of them we go inside and we are doing all of the work on the inside, so their staff doesn't deal with the compost other than putting it in the bin. And then we also offer 24/7 drop-off access. So our community site is really accessible to anyone who wants to go there. We have 24/7 access. And then we also collect yard debris from community-wide. We don't have to be a subscribing member to do that. And we serve all kinds of organizations, Fred Meyer's, Alaskan Brewing, Uncruise, Rainbow Foods, Malga Distillery, Ock Bay Elementary School, the Food Bank, and just dozens of organizations of all kinds. And hundreds of homes. And on the processing level, yeah, we run a compost facility. We turn nasty food scraps into beautiful compost that looks like soil and smells like the forest floor. We manufacture 6 different products. We distribute them both bagged and bulk by the truckload or dump truckload or the 2-gallon bag, whatever people need. We sell it directly to our customers. We also have wholesale accounts all over Juneau, and we do ship throughout Southeast. So we're sending huge volumes of stuff out on fishing boats or on AML. So we're really helping to serve all of Southeast with food production. And then community, right? Juneau Compost is an LLC, but we don't have shareholders. We're not out there to make profit. We're there to cover our expenses basically and serve as many people as we can serve. We donate to local kids groups and nonprofits all the time. Most recently, we helped the Thane Community Garden and brought them truckloads of material so they could start. And we helped the community garden on Montana Creek get their compost going there, and we bring them material when they request it. And we provide compost education and consultation services, and we basically make it our mission to inspire others to recover resources for our community. And that's what I've got.
Presentation, or should I leave a moment?
We'll do questions at the end, but all the panel that first.
Let's try this. Good evening. My name's Sir Scott. I am the environmental coordinator with Native Lands and Resources with Lincoln and Ida. That's a part of our Native Lands and Resources division. I've been with the tribe for, sorry. Yes. Can you hear me now? Is that a little better? Okay. All right. My name's Sir Scott. I'm the environmental coordinator for Clinton and Haida, the Native Lands and Resources Division. I've been with the tribe for about 14 or since 2014, but this is relatively new, working on composting and getting involved in solid waste. So I just wanted to show some of our first steps in that direction with our program here. So, but before we get to that, I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a very brief overview of kind of the tribe and our stance and our position. So I know it's not just general knowledge. So I wanted to take a moment to show kind of the organizational chart of where we stand in our department. So as you can see, we have our tribal assembly, our executive council, and our TNH president. And then that highlighted circle there, that's our Native Lands and Resources division. And that's where I'm housed. But you can see all the various departments that have various different programs that all serve not just Juneau, but Southeast Alaska and beyond. So that little box that was highlighted is this environmental program. And as you can see, here's some of the staff that we have currently under the various divisions, but the highlighted circle is again where I'm stationed at under our environmental program. I'm underneath the environmental manager, Raymond Paddock, as you see, and there's myself underneath that. But I just wanted to give a brief overview of that, and just so everyone can kind of get an idea of how we function and kind of the steps and the steps above us. So, you know, TNH, we are a tribal entity, a sovereign entity. So we have various resources, numerous resources that serve all the tribal citizens and the surrounding communities, not just in here in Juneau, but again, the Southeast region. So yeah, I just want to take a moment to give that little caveat. But all right, so here's a little introduction to our composting program. So we applied for a composting and food waste reduction grant earlier or late last year because we were given the directive that the tribe wants to get involved with some of the solid waste issues, the growing concerns of that. So we applied for this grant and then we were awarded the grant for a 2-year agreement. And with this grant, we were proposing to address the solid waste issue just with the tribe. So this grant is addressing the solid waste, organic waste from Clinton and Haida and the enterprises that the Clinton and Haida has. So we have our Sacred Grounds Catering, our smokehouse catering, Sacred Grounds Coffee Shop, and all the kitchen spaces that are within the organization. We want to aim to collect all that, the resource recovery, and bringing that to a compost location, creating a compost, and that in turn will be used for our greenhouse program. We do have a greenhouse that is housed here in Juneau as well, but I can get more into that here in a moment. So can you raise your hand on Zoom if you are not able to see the screen?
Let's see.
We can see the screen, it's just not turning slides. It's your welcome slide still.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sounds like it would be a slow connection
Yeah.
problem.
And I think we think that this it would be good to put out maybe just the agenda, because then people at home are able to, they could click all the links themselves, because all of the presentations are hyperlinking the agendas.
There's something in
Okay.
learning what's the And there's one that's here.
Is it working then?
Would someone on Zoom please raise your hand if you still cannot see the presentation slide?
On a slide that says Big Hannah in vessel composter.
We can see that now.
Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay, so, yeah, so our, the grant that we applied for this, composting program. We had several discussions of how we wanted to approach this project. Several, conversations with, local, organizations, other composting operations here in town, and across the region. We talked with other, communities and tribal, composting programs to see what they're doing, what's best with them, because we do understand that Juneau is a unique location, just all across Southeast is so unique. Each space is going to have its own little thing that they need to figure out, as you know, Lisa has so eloquently done with her operation. So, so we were trying to figure out a solution that might work best for us, for the tribe. And one of the things that came across our plate was the possibility of having an in-vessel composter. And this is kind of one of the unknown things. So we wanted to take a chance with this in-vessel composter and to be able to take steps towards creating, again, a composting from our TNH organizational waste, but also a system that doesn't require that doesn't require so much hands-on, I guess you could say, or that really kind of reduces a little bit of the need to be there and like manually turning things and having to do all the manual labor stuff that you normally have to do. So and theoretically, you know, we're hoping that this in-vessel composter, in addition to being a little less hands-on, it also gives us a lot of the internal readings that you can control temperature, shows what the compost pile is doing inside the in-vessel, give us all the, you know, all the statistics that we could possibly need for possibly creating a good quality product. And then also on the other side of that, creating us being allowed to see what's going into the in-vessel composter and then getting a good quality product out. So that's the idea. So we took a chance and we went with this in-vessel composter, and the idea is to have this housed here in Juneau for the tribe. Again, this is just an idea of like having a little Quonset hut to store the facility. It's just going to be an operation that doesn't need to be super big at the moment, because we're just going to be running with our organizational waste. And that's so here's getting into that. So, you know, like I said, we have our sacred grounds, our smokehouse catering. Our idea is to kind of put some of these compost stations around the TNH organization, a system of collection for that. And then yeah, and so a part of that in-vessel, you know, we have a CO2 sensor that's going to give us some readings for the carbon output and be able to give us some real hard data on what the exhaust emissions are of that. And I guess one of the also another benefit of the in-vessel is it's all self-contained. It can sit outside if we wanted to, but you know, we want to kind of keep it nice. So putting it inside of a storage, but yeah, we're still working out all the logistics of like how this can work here in Juneau for the tribe. And this is a pilot project, so it is something that, you know, we're going to kind of learn as we go along. But yeah, we're excited. We're excited for this program, and we're excited for the tribe to be able to provide compost for our greenhouse that we have here. Our greenhouse here is Tehit. This is located here in the valley behind our office here, or our office here in the valley. But that is an educational greenhouse that we use to, you know, just I think Amy's here to I don't know, you have like various educational plans for the greenhouse. But yeah, so the idea is to be able to provide composting for this greenhouse, and whatever the produce comes out of the greenhouse, be able to provide that to the tribal elders or any other programs that might need it or request it. But yeah, and also not just composting for this TNH greenhouse, but of course, if we're able to provide it elsewhere that's needed, that request, we want to be able to answer that call as well. But first and foremost, we do want to make sure that we get the operation up and going and make sure it's a good quality product first. But yeah, that's our program for the moment. And we're happy to take that step, take the initiative as our tribal program to get a composting operation up and going here in Juneau. And I think one of our big goals is to, as we all know, that there's several stressors on the landfill. So this is kind of doing our part as far as mitigating our organizational waste from going into the landfill. We want to be able to do our part and take control of our waste stream and create a usable product at the end of it. So yeah, that's our program. Thank you.
All right, well, hello, everyone. I am not Diana Robinson. Unfortunately, she was not able to be here tonight. She had a family emergency. So I am pinch hitting. My name is Denise Koch. I also work for CBJ, and I am the Director of Engineering and Public Works. So Diana and I are in the same department. So, and also I think just because everybody's thought process is a little bit different, I'm actually going to start on her second slide and then go back. So I'm going to change the order a little bit. Let's see. I really wanted to start with the waste 101 and sort of this helps me to frame sort of the big picture. And before we zoom down into composting, as Sir had just mentioned, in terms of we don't control our waste, fully control our waste destiny here in Juneau. And by that, I mean, waste hauling is done by a private company, that's Alaska Waste, and they're regulated by the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. That's a state entity. The landfill is owned by a different private company, Waste Management, and they're regulated by DEC and EPA on environmental matters, but not necessarily on operations, prices, those sorts of things. And then in terms of then what's the role that's left over for local government? And since we don't control garbage and we know that the landfill is a finite resource, the landfill has been reporting that they have 20 years left of lifespan. But honestly, they've been reporting that for a long time. It's been 20 years for a long time. But what we do know is it is a finite resource. At some point, it will fill up, whether it's 20 years or 25 years. One day it'll be full, and that will leave the community with choices that there aren't any perfect great choices for waste. We'd have to decide whether the community wanted a landfill. We'd have to decide, or you could do incineration, or you can ship your waste down south. So all of I won't go into all of the details associated with those different options because that would be its own session. But just know that that's sort of the framework for where we're going to talk about next is, okay, well, we want to keep that landfill open as long as possible because the next steps will be, they'll be expensive. They'll be more expensive than what we have now. So the options that we have as local government is to try to elongate the lifespan of the landfill. So the space that CBJ has operated in, you could see the local government talks about recycling, talks about junk vehicles and household hazardous waste. That's all part of our Recycle Works program. And the way that we have done that at CBJ is that we have a CBJ employee, and actually I have to give kudos to him, Stuart Ashton, who's here with us tonight, who does a great job. But essentially we contract those services out. So CBJ essentially pays for the service, but we do procurement. We hire a company to run those services for us. And so let's go to the next one also. Talking a little bit about what we have, our recycling facility. Our facility is pretty close to capacity. Our recycling, so when I mention our facility, I mean the one that is at Waste Management. CBJ pays Waste Management in a contract to run that drop-off program. We estimate that probably about 10% of potential recyclables in the waste stream are actually being recycled. The building itself is pretty close to operating at max capacity, because I know sometimes people say, well, what if we just we advertise more, or those sorts of things. We're kind of getting close to capacity at that facility, so that's something to know. We do know that there is food waste that goes as a part of Juneau's waste stream. It's a part of every community's waste stream. And that presents opportunities for diversion, and it's getting us closer to our compost discussion. And also, just wanted to mention we have a unique situation because we have a seasonal population, and that causes some seasonal dynamics in our waste stream. So I'm going to go back to, Diana's first slide. So given that overall situation on Juneau's waste stream, several members of the community and CBJ staff and JCOS were really concerned about the long-term waste, situation for Juneau. And a few years ago, JCOS made a recommendation. We need to really think about zero waste and what could we do to further, divert waste from our landfill. Once again, it's all about with the goal of extending the life of the landfill. And they did a lot of great work on that, and a lot of the members who worked on that are here today. And ultimately, JCOS is an advisory board to the Assembly, so they presented that information to the Assembly. The Juneau Commission on Sustainability. So Nick, Nick is a member of JCOS, and JCOS is the entity that is they're the entity that's putting this on today. So that Juneau Commission on Sustainability, that is a CBJ board. It's one of the many boards and commissions, and their job is to advise the Assembly. So they got interested in the solid waste issue. They put forth a recommendation about zero waste and said, oh, we think that local government should think a lot more about zero waste and zero waste planning. They presented those ideas to the Assembly. The Assembly every year, they make decisions on what their goals will be. And the Assembly has a number of goals, but one of their goals, sustainable community, is number 5, which is what's on the slide behind me. And they have a 5A is actually, and now I'm sort of paraphrasing, but it's a zero waste and waste diversion goal. That's a Juneau Assembly goal. And we also have some other sort of planning tools on how CBJ, local government, and our Assembly decides what are the priorities for the community. There's also a process of looking at legislative capital priorities, and that's a prioritization process. And municipal composting has been on that list for the last couple of years. And that has, gotten legs, and we were very, very pleased to get a congressionally directed spending from Senator Murkowski to start working on congressionally directed spending is the new term. It used to be called earmarks. That's what I think people, that's the rebranding, but officially it's congressionally directed spending. And we got some of that money to start planning for a municipal scale compost facility. So let me advance here. So with that, when you get essentially an earmark, I'll use the old sort of plain English term. When you get an earmark, it doesn't mean that we have the money in a CBJ bank account right at this minute. What it means, you still have to apply. It's essentially very much like a grant process, but a grant process that you know at the end you're going to get $2.5 million. So it's not a competitive grant process, but you still have to fill out, you know, applications to EPA, and they'll probably do a NEPA process, and it's not fast. But we are right now where we are in this process is we CBJ are filling out the application to EPA and going through the grant process to get at the end of that whole process, we will get $2.5 million, but we don't have that at this moment. And in terms of, there are a couple of pieces that we're thinking about when we think about municipal compost facility. First of all, we're very grateful for the $2.5 million. And I know in my personal finance, that seems like an awful lot of money. But in the realm of big engineering projects, it's really not that much money. It's good seed money, but it's not an enormous amount of money. So what we are thinking that we would get for $2.5 million is you have a location, you grade the site, you do stormwater work, you probably bring electrical utilities, water, sewer, you know, it's the infrastructure, improving roads, the road access to a site. It's all the stuff that's really important, but is largely invisible and underground. Maybe a little bit of equipment, maybe, but mostly we'll wind up with a site, but a site that's has some utilities to it and some amenities. And probably an area to receive compost and those sorts of things. And once again, as I had mentioned earlier, when I talked about other areas that CBJ is in terms of sort of zero waste, under that zero waste umbrella, like recycling or household hazardous waste or junk vehicles, we will oftentimes build facilities, but we don't run them. We go out to the public, we do a competitive bidding process. We, of course, we welcome our local business to compete in that process. But we do not plan on running that facility in terms, and by that I mean not having CBJ staff there to do that work. We'll contract it out to a private entity or a nonprofit. What we're doing right now, while we are in the process of filling out all of our grant paperwork to get our $2.5 million, what we've started on, because we have a little bit of seed money from the assembly, because another assembly process is, of course, establishing a budget that happens. It's a biennial process, but it feels like it's annual because there's an annual component as well. But there's an operating budget and there's a capital budget. And in the capital budget, we do have some money for zero waste and zero waste planning. So what we're doing in terms of getting started is we have contracted out to do a waste characterization study with the Cascadia group. And the purpose of that study is to try and get an understanding of what does our waste stream look like right now, right? I mean, in order to set metrics for where we want to go, it's important to know where you are right now. So what this company is going to do, and their deadline for completing this work is in June of 2024, but they're literally going to take trash that was, it's picked up at people's houses and was bound for the landfill. And of course, collaboration, and we're cooperating with waste haulers and with waste management. They're fully aware of of this process. And they're going to go through the trash that Juneau, brings to the landfill. They're going to make sure that they get residential trash, commercial trash, the various different trash flows, and people are going to literally pick through it. And they're going to see how much trash is actually recyclable, how much of it is organics that could be composted. And that's really going to help us understand where we are right now so that we can try and establish goals for where we want to go in the future. And then we could measure whether we're making progress or not. So I would imagine that when we're at the point to do our procurement for a municipal compost facility, we will at that point know what the profile is of Juneau's trash and what Juneau throws away. And then we'll be able to set some goals for what we'd like to see composted. I imagine we would ask a contractor for that facility to provide us with some metrics and some data on how much they're composting. And then the third bullet on here is the zero waste subdivision. And let me maybe go to, let's see. So there's a mention of the zero waste subdivision. So in terms of where we're talking about and the physical location that we're thinking about for a compost facility, it's essentially behind Costco and Home Depot. There's a CBJ land. It is a former gravel pit. We store riprap there. We store snow there. I mean, there are certain things that are happening there right now. But we are thinking also bigger, we're thinking sort of big picture. Compost is a piece of zero waste, but it is not all of zero waste. So that future spot, and we haven't even started the planning for this yet, but the big picture concept is that, we could have our compost facility there. We could have a recycling facility there. As I mentioned, we work with waste management to run our recycling center, but it's kind of getting close to capacity. So we could have things like recycling there as well, junk vehicles. It could be broader. The vision is for broader than just compost. And let's see, I know I'm running up on time, so I'm going to skip past these last items. But maybe I'll just stop here and just let folks know. Also, we've been advertising, after Halloween, our Great Pumpkin drop off, and you can drop off your pumpkins at the recycling center. And then CBJ has partnered with Juneau Compost to do that work, and you could drop it off, and it's free to you. That's it.
Thank you to all three of our panelists. As you noted, thanks to all of our technical issues, we're running a little bit behind on time. So I'm excited to jump straight to the question. I do think it's worth noting, though, this last couple of slides, clean up, it looked like a lot of wastewater, that is to say sewage. And this is a question we get a lot about composting. The short answer is there are chemicals in wastewater that the composting process doesn't treat, which you don't want to do. So we could go into that as a whole other technical discussion. But I do think it's worth pointing out current composting is not. So yes, wow, looks like we have lots of questions right away. I think I saw you raising your hand.
I'm very concerned. Private business, okay? And I know. You got the microphone.
Do you want to run it around? this microphone in the middle for all that.
So, okay. So Diane, I'm very concerned about. But I gotta say that I've watched Juneau compost for years now, and I'm really impressed. With what they've done, starting out with nothing. And they do a really good service. I'm hooked up with them. I've always composted, but I can't compost on food scraps because it's fair. So I get it, so what I'm saying is, would it be possible, and I think it is possible, think about pasture grants, especially if you have a sole source, okay? What you told us about, what Juneau plans to do. He's already doing. I'm not going around. I personally think that, Juneau's role should be, more of, getting the word out. Helping people understand that, composting is important. That, they can compost. There are services available to do that. And so, it would seem to me is, Lisa and, what do you think by that? What do you think they Lisa? Rather than start a park. And I gotta say one thing. There was a planning study a long time ago that Jim did nothing with it. And in the interim, Lisa's not talking to.
That one's for me. So do first want to start and say that, of course, we appreciate the great work that Lisa has done and Juneau Compost has done. We are not able to do a pass-through grant. We have some federal funding, and per our, I know sometimes it feels unfair, but we have to do competitive procurement when we're looking for goods and services to use to get the best use of public dollar. And we do that, in all of our, any amount of money that we're purchasing, anything over $5,000. But the other thing that I think is really important to know is that there's, of course, been great work done by Juneau Compost. I mean, I'm a client of Juneau Compost. But there's also, we think, but this is where we're going to verify with the waste study, a lot of opportunity to expand composting in the community, that there's a lot of organics that still go to the landfill. And there's room for great expansion. And of course, we very much hope that, that Juneau Compost bids, I mean, Clinton and Haida could bid. We can't put our thumb on the scale on who's going to bid and pick the winner from the beginning. But we think that there's a lot of room for growth. Nationally, if you look at the averages, we think that we might be diverting, 5% of organics. Now, part of that could be there's also, there's also sometimes at grocery stores, you have things that are in bags or things that have twist ties, and they're a little more challenging to compost. And then some municipal large scale composters have equipment to debag and do those sorts of things and get at some of the organics that are a little bit more challenging and labor intensive to collect. But of course, we hope that all of our local entities that are involved in composting will bid when we get to that point.
Very close. I saw your hand come up first there. And we have the panel people, I think I saw a message pop up that the online folks are having a little trouble hearing the question. So if you could just, as succinctly as possible, restate the question, since you're close to the laptop for the folks on Zoom.
Thank you. My name is Kim Metcalf and I'm a Juneau compost customer also. I'm just been delighted to see what wonderful work that Lisa has done with the small business. And my question is, isn't there something else, since there's so many problems with garbage and the landfill, all this stuff in Juneau? Is there any possibility you can use this money for something other than composting?
So for those online, the question was, there was a acknowledgement of the great work that Juneau Compost does, a comment that there are many problems in Juneau, and a question as to whether or not CBJ could redirect the $2.5 million that we have of congressionally directed spending towards a different problem. Do you feel that's an accurate summary? Something other than composting? And I believe that we can't do that. When you get congressionally directed spending, it is directed to a particular project. So we couldn't say that, I don't know what the other project, I mean, we couldn't redirect it to something else because we've got specific marching orders, if you will, from Congress to use the money in that way.
I'm just going to see, do we have any online questions related for? Okay, great. All right, so we'll take another in the room. Go with you.
Yeah.
And who's in the second?
Stats here, and I was gonna ask Lisa, so, is there any composting, I know,
Denise,
yeah. Mentioned that small business. And there's grant enabling labor capacity, etc. Is your business, do you feel your business would be able to capacity? And also I'm wondering, but and do you foresee being able to enlarge your business?
So the question was, do I see Juneau Compost as being able to expand capacity and could I provide more? And the answer is totally yes. The size of my facility now is matching what the demand is now. And if the city instead was urging people to compost, then more people would compost with me at the facility I have already. I still have more capacity. And in fact, 2 years ago, I actually approached the city about renting. They're my landlord, so I lease at fair market value a 1 acre parcel from them. And I 2 years ago asked to lease a 2 acre parcel in the gravel pit that now is going to be the zero waste subdivision, and they said no. And so I wanted to expand, and you know, you need land to expand. I could still double my capacity at the current site that I'm at now. And there's no reason why I couldn't grow to meet all of the needs of Juneau. I don't see why the city thinks that they need something separate to meet the needs. I'm meeting all the demand there is right now for everybody who wants a service. I've never turned anybody away.
You get one online question. I think one sound didn't want to read it.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think it's coming through here.
Can you
And
hear
then
me?
we have a second person.
I can also write the. Right.
Can you try again, please?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, this is Lori.
Okay. Yeah, well, I really thank the presenters. This is a really important topic and it would be great to have a longer meeting. I do have a question for Lisa. How would you envision a mutually beneficial collaboration between Juneau Compost and CBJ?
Okay, so if you didn't hear that, the question was how could I possibly envision a mutual collaboration between Juneau Compost and CBJ? And right now, CBJ is my landlord and I run the compost business. I make all of the decisions and I pay them rent money every month. Theoretically, you could think they could spend that $2.5 million to develop this bigger site. And then they issue an RFP for someone to then be their tenant. And so I could theoretically bid to run this facility that they've built, but they don't have to come up with operating costs. They don't have to have a budget. They don't have to decide how the heck they're going to collect material, how they're going to process material. They can literally pave a site, have water and electricity at it, and I could pay them to operate my business there.
I think you mentioned that 2.5 would cover basically preparing the site and electricity infrastructure. So. Thank you.
So, if you didn't hear for the people online, the question was, essentially restating how I had mentioned that $2.5 million is not as much money as you think. It'll prep a site. And the question was how much money then is left over to operate the RFP. Is that a fair summary? Okay, well, thank you. So that the congressionally directed spending is for capital. So it is for the sort of things that I mentioned in terms of having a facility, having a site. Also for capital, you can, when you get a capital budget, you could also buy equipment. But in terms of the money to actually operate the site, that would have to go through the regular, budgetary process with the assembly, and make that decision as to whether or not CBJ would, allocate general funds, whether it would be user fees, whether we would lease it out and have the contractor collect those decisions are sort of all yet to be made. But I think to your point, the $2.5 million is not for operating, it's for capital costs. Oh.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes to go before the library closes. I would like to sneak in one last very quick question. A lot of the questions we've had so far have been focused on the relationship between the new city facility and Juneau Compost, which is an important issue, and I think everyone here has heard that. I'd love to prioritize one last question on a different topic. Okay, with the clipboard.
Why don't we allow salvage at the dump? They do in all sorts of communities all around Southeast Alaska. Why don't we allow salvage at the dump? Somebody else.
And I would say because it's a private facility, so CBJ couldn't mandate that.
If you want to know when these happen, we are I would have a hearing. If you want to know when these happen, then just stay tuned to city announcements generally and our Facebook page, facebook.com, for when.
All right, I see the library staff coming to the second. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks everyone online for participating. We're closing it down.